Hi everybody, welcome back to another video. We've got a very dirty whiteboard and we've got a picture of a brain. I wonder why. It's because we're learning about the brain today. Yes, exciting stuff, your brain. It is responsible for all of your complex behaviours, everything that you do. It controls and coordinates everything. Breathing, sleeping, memory, running. Watching this video right now, your brain is controlling your thoughts, what you're thinking, how you're moving, blah 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 blah. So your brain is part of your central nervous system along with your spinal cord, and it's made up of billions and billions of neurons. We haven't really talked about neurons in depth. I can talk about them. Let me know if you want to know about neurons and what they do and why there are billions of them in the central nervous system. But the brain is in charge of running all your complex behaviours, as we've just said, and it's split into many different regions, as you can see right here. There's many different parts to a brain, and no, don't worry, we're not going to go through every single part. We're just going to go through the parts that are relevant to the GCSE. Oh, I forgot to say, hi, my name's, you don't need to know that, and this is GCSE Biology, in case you're new here. Yes, okay, so, this part of the brain, you see it? It's like corally colour. Spinal. Okay, let me write properly. Jot this down if you can. You don't need to draw a complex brain like that. You can print one off like I did. Spinal cord. And then this thing, can you see it like that? That is something I can't pronounce, but I'm going to have a go. But I can spell it. It's called the cerebellum. I think I just nailed that pronunciation actually. And this is responsible for muscle coordination. So, you know, walking, all that stuff. You want to know why you can do that? Thank the cerebellum. The next thing we've got is this part, pretty much. And that is called the cerebral, yeah, I'll spell it for you and you can figure out how you exactly say that. I'm quite bad when it comes to speaking, but I can write things. It's called that, the cerebral cortex, and this is responsible for things like consciousness. It is responsible for things like memory, your speech, you know, your language, something that I'm struggling with as I try to speak, and, you know, things like your intelligence. You can thank the cerebral cortex for that stuff. Jot that down. I'd advise it. The part here, you see that? That is called the medulla. Controls unconscious activities. Like things that you do, I spell unconscious, things that you do without even realising that you're doing them. I don't know if I even spelled that wrong. Oh well. Right. Like breathing. You breathe without even thinking about it. Don't start thinking about it now because you'll stop breathing, right? I know. And like your heartbeat, that's just all part of things that happen in your body which you don't control, really. Well, you can control your breathing, but you unconsciously control it. Yes, you might be thinking, Emma, how are we supposed to remember all of that? And I'll help you. Well, I might not be able to, but we'll think of ways. The cerebellum. Bells. Sarah. Okay, we'll come back to that one. Medulla. Medulla. Okay, I'm struggling right now. I'll come up with things and I'll link them into the description of how you can remember how these link to each one. I reckon I can figure it out. I'm usually quite good at making weird things. It helps me out with tests a lot. So yeah, that's the different parts of the brain. Jot that down. I'm now ripping my brain out. And this blue tack. So you may be wondering, I wonder how people know that that's the cerebellum and that does that and that's the medulla and that controls unconscious. Like, how can you do that? You can't just get into someone's brain and see what it's going on in there, can you? But there is different ways that scientists, for example, have been able to understand the brain. The first thing is by a thing called MRI scans. I don't know if you've heard of that before. Sometimes it's in movies, but it's basically like a magnetic scanner thing. If you want to know what it stands for, I'm going to tell you right now. It stands for magnetic renaissance, I want to say. Resonance. Imaging scanner. Magnetic resonance imaging scanner. And this is like a big fancy tube like this, and you basically are on like this table thing, I think, and you go in it like this, like that, and they look at your brain and they can come up with a very detailed picture of your brain. And then you can do things like you can eat, well, maybe not eat, but you can listen to music and you can try remember things, and they can see what's active, or like what parts are linked to what, like what parts of your brain are responding to what you're doing, to find out the links between between what you're doing and your brain, so you can find out the function of your parts of your brain, if that makes sense. I probably overcomplicated that sentence, but for example, if you tried to recall a memory, the detailed picture could see a part of your brain being active and doing things, obviously a little bit more complex than that, but and then they can decide that that part of your brain helps you with your memory. Another thing you can do is actually electrically stimulate your brain, which sounds very... Oh my god, I think I just spelled that wrong. And you do this by pushing a tiny electrode into the tissue and giving it a small into tissue, and then giving it like a zap of electricity. Crazy, I know. So you can basically just stimulate your brain, and then you can observe what's stimulating different parts of your brain and the reaction that has on the response that has on what you do. So for example, if you stimulate the motor area, this is the part of your brain which controls movement, but they know that because they stimulated this part of the brain, and your muscle would contract and you'd move, and so then they would know that the motor area links to that part of the brain. And then you have MRI. Oh no, you don't. We've already done that. And then you have studying patients with brain damage. This is pretty self-explanatory. I think I'm going. Studying brain damage. So basically, brain damage is when parts of your brain are damaged. funnily enough, and you can look at a small part of your brain and see the damaged part and see the symptoms of their brain damage, and you can work out connections. If you don't know what I'm talking about, for example, the effect of the patient, so if an area of the back of the brain was damaged by a stroke, for example, and you went blind, you would know that that part of the brain controls your vision. Or if you had a stroke and a part of your brain was damaged again, and you couldn't move, you would know that that part of the brain is linked to movement. I maybe have just, but basically you know that. But messing with your brain and, you know, trying to develop the brain and understand it and find treatments to it is very difficult. It's very complex and delicate, and if something goes wrong, the risks are very fatal, basically, if something goes wrong. So it can affect your physical brain, or it can actually affect how your brain functions. So you can it can affect the way you speak, the way you move. So that's why it's very risky for scientists to go into studying to carry out treatment, test out treatments and stuff with the brain. But they've got treatments for disorders of the nervous system. For example, if you've ever came across Parkinson's disease, that electrical stimulation can reduce the muscle tremors caused by the nervous system. So yeah, I can talk about more about the brain if you want. I can go into neurons, I can go into more about that. Just comment down below. Sorry, that was a video. Bye, see you next time. Ooh, my hands.